Your eyes up in the morning, beneath the stars so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horses kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. You'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight.
Howdy there, I'm Matt McKinley and we're burning daylight.
In the saddle till the job's done right.
Welcome to Burning Daylight, the only podcast for the working cowboy. Go ahead. Well, howdy there, daylight burners. Hope everybody's had a good weekend, and I'm excited about this show. We've got Mackenzie, Johnston. We're at Nebraska. I know Sandhills somewhere, but whereabouts?
Yeah, central Nebraska. So our ranch lies about an hour north of Broken Bow. We're an hour south of Ainsworth, literally right on the eastern edge of the Sandhills. We aren't that far from corn country.
Okay. So that and how long has your family been in that area?
Well, actually, we're transplants. We've only been here about 20 years. Before this, so my dad started out by Alliance, Nebraska. He ranched there with my granddad, and then he wanted to expand, so he bought a ranch out by Harrison, Nebraska. We were on the South Dakota-Nebraska border. We were there for about 12 years. So he wanted to get back to the Sandhills. Then he moved here to central Nebraska.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got you. So, that's still a pretty good chunk of time you guys have been there. But I know there's a lot of people in Nebraska that have been there since 1850s or whatever. So there's some well-established operations in that part of the world.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, there's some big operations that have been here. They've been homesteaded. 20 years is quite a while, but we're still considered the newbies, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. And so how did you've I guess and don't take offense, you've caused a stink in the beef industry over the past couple of years, and so you wouldn't mind just kind of running us through how all that worked?
Yeah, definitely. So long story short, I started working for Nebraska Cattlemen back in 2014. And I've always been on our family ranch.
Yep. That's the State Cattle Association.
Yep, it's an affiliate of NCBA. So I just always like to have a side gig to get me off the ranch, or else I never leave. So anyways, started working for them in 2014. Then in March of 2020, I wrote an article about Brazilian beef imports, opinion editorial that Tri-State Livestock News out of Belfouche, South Dakota ran for me. And basically that article called out Sonny Perdue not halting Brazilian beef imports. It puts our cattle industry at risk and all that jazz. So that happened. And then a few weeks later, I was fired from my position with Nebraska Cattlemen. I'd worked for them for 6 years, and I received a 2-minute phone call being fired. And right about that time was when COVID was hitting and markets were falling out of bed and everything was very uncertain. And I was very frustrated with my situation with Nebraska Cattlemen. So I went ahead and wrote a blog post about how organizations like Nebraska Cattlemen and NCBA, how they do not represent the common cattleman, the grassroots man that's out here working every day.
Mhm.
And that kind of essentially stirred the pot, turned everything upside down. And the reason I was given was because of that article. The
And this
NCBA.
was just like a guest post for Tri-State
Right.
Livestock, right?
Yeah, this was just one I sent in that I felt the need to write, and they published it for me. They publish a lot of editorials. They do a great job. And yeah, so I was told that article did not align with NC or NCBA. But of course, I felt like Brazilian beef imports, they do harm our industry, and there's a chance that they could just tear our industry apart if something really terrible would happen, mad cow disease getting here, something like that. So anyways,
that couldn't have anything to do with, JBS being Brazilian owned, or National Beef being majority Brazilian owned, or I just don't. I didn't know that cancel culture was a thing on the conservative side of the aisle.
You're telling me.
Who would have thunk it? I mean,
I don't know.
Perdue, he was appointed by Donald Trump, so he's supposed to be a good guy, right?
Right, exactly.
Oh my gosh, it's almost like all politicians are pieces of shit. It's almost it's weird.
Oh, I totally agree. And like you said, I didn't know cancel culture was even like in our industry. I guess I'd say that much, but they tried their darndest to shut me up. And yeah, so you mentioned the Packers. Obviously, at that time when I was fired, the big four Packers, all four of them, they were all members of NCBA. So I'm sure they had something to say about it. And then here recently, NCBA came out, and they came out saying that they want to halt all Brazilian beef imports because there were a couple atypical cases of mad cow disease that were reported down in Brazil back in September. And there were a couple cases of Creutzfeldt, I don't think I'm saying that right, Creutzfeldt-Jacobs disease. It's the human form of mad cow disease that was reported down there in Brazil. And now they're jumping on the bandwagon. Hey, we need to stop the Brazilian beef imports. And so in the past couple weeks, I wrote an article about how it's interesting how now they're like, oh, let's run and save the industry. Let's halt the Brazilian beef imports. But a few years ago, if you said anything about Brazilian beef imports and you had anything to do with NCBA, they'll just cut you off, cancel you essentially, like you said. So yeah, that's basically my track record of stirring the pot. I think that's kind of what I'm known for. I've always been one to speak up, even if people don't agree, I guess. The people that don't agree with me, that's completely fine. And we can disagree in this industry. That's the thing. That's completely fine. The problem is that when we have disagreements and people are canceled, I see that in other organizations, not just NCBA. So that's kind of my track record.
Yeah. Well, it's like you said, 6 years of employment. And that generated a 2 to 3 minute phone call that said, "Hey, get out." That's pretty remarkable. I kind of had to. It's funny when you start to speak up and it goes against like the mainstream, for the lack of a better word, like the mainstream narrative or agenda. Mm-hmm. Yeah, people don't like that. I've experienced that when you voice an opinion, even if it's unpopular. There's certain people and especially in places of power, they just like nope.
Yeah, exactly. You can't go against the grain.
Mm-hmm. It's wild, and you would think, and I guess we were talking a little bit before we came on air here. I dipped my toe into this beef cattle industry argument back in, what was that? That had been 2019 when the Fair Cattle Markets campaign, which that was the Western Ag Reporter. I don't know if Tri-State Livestock was involved or not, but I know Western Ag Reporter was really the driving force behind it.
Yeah, they kicked it off.
Yeah, and so you had a lot of like RCAF type folks. You had, just a lot of different people from all over the industry. And if I remember right, the initial push was try to get the attention of Donald Trump
Mhm.
was through Twitter, because Twitter was Trump's main mode of communication. I would say it ultimately failed, and it really just turned in. We just looked like a bunch of monkeys slinging shit back and forth, and it was not good for anyone in the industry. I don't. Packers benefited. They always do, but
Mhm.
the actual cattle producer, we looked childish, and I was really bummed out by that whole deal. And then after that, I had Bill Bullard on, um, and then I had John Robinson from NCBA, and then a couple weeks later, I had Leah Biondo from U.S. Cattlemen's on, and man, after all of that, I just felt exhausted talking to, and I ride pins for a living. I've got one guy that works below me, and so I have a very small part of the cattle industry, but I just felt I left there like thinking, man, we are not in a good spot, not in a good spot,
Yeah, and
and oof.
yeah, and as we talked about beforehand, within the cattle industry, what we do best is we circle our wagons and we shoot inward. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'll say we have our main organizations. We have USDA, we have NCBA, we have RCAF. There are things I agree with those organizations, and there are things I disagree with.
Yep.
Across the board. One thing that we cannot seem to do in our industry is compromise. I don't know if that comes from pride, if that comes from ego, if it comes from just wanting all the credit for fixing the industry. But at the end of the day, I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and what we were talking about is it's not going to be an organization that's going to save our industry.
Mm-mm.
It is not going to be the government, because if it was, they would have stepped in and something would have been done by now. It comes down to individuals in the industry. If we look back
Mm-hmm.
over the past few months, what cattle feeders have done, the leverage they have gained, the fact that they have put their heels in the ground and they have demanded more money, that is what we have to do. All these new packing plants coming online. We've got the one here in North Platte, sustainable beef,
That's awesome.
Yes, it's fantastic. And there's, I can't even name them all off, but that's what we have to do as an industry, because we cannot rely on the government for anything. And then,
No.
Cattle organizations, I've got nothing against any of them. They're all good. But, it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to get things done. It's hard to get things done when all we do is fight, So, and I think that's part of the reason why I've been so vocal, is that I'll take it upon myself to talk about some issues, and whether or not I get anything done, I don't know. But
Yeah. I've been pounding the table for direct to consumer beef. I started this deal 2.5 years ago on this podcast, and very early on, like I said, that I see this as a way, because the millennials are now the majority of the market share, or the target market. Your consumer is majority millennial. Millennials want source and aged, verified. They want like humanely raised. All the hipster hippy dippy. I don't want to call it bullshit, but it comes off as bullshit a lot. But it's true. We need to be proud of that. We're taking care of our cattle. All that stuff it makes a difference. But your traditional cattle producer doesn't want to lean into the feel good type deal. Well, you can't get by on the romance anymore. That part's over.
That's exactly it. And I think so many within our industry are so hard-headed to make any changes, look outside the box. And what the consumer wants now is different than what the consumers wanted back in 1976. Back in 1996, things have completely changed. And as an industry, we do have to pay attention to what the consumer wants, products, all that jazz. And we have to follow that, because they're the ones that are buying our product. We have to be open-minded to change, at least.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you can also wear your values on your sleeve, and and still get somewhere. I mean, look at like my water bottle is covered in Black Rifle coffee gear.
Yeah.
I've been a huge fan of them. They're unapologetically pro-America, pro-Second Amendment, all that. And they just went public and valued at $1.7 billion. You can wear your values on your sleeve and be successful.
Yeah.
And nostalgia still sells. You can still capture the romance of the cattle industry and still provide those, like, hey, this is humanely raised, this is antibiotic free, or whatever the fuck people want nowadays. And you can still explain that, hey, this one had antibiotics, but if we didn't give them antibiotics, it would have died, and nobody would have got to enjoy this delicious cut of beef.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, we can still tell our story, and I think we will always be a romanticized industry. And it is. I mean, if you look at what we do day in, day out, it's mind blowing. The lifestyles we get to live, what we do every day, we will always be a romanticized industry. But and like you talked about antibiotics, like we need to do a better do a better job telling our story, like across the board. That's a big issue we have in our industry, the disconnect in between, us and urban America, the consumers, all that. We need to do a better job. And I think that would help us out.
Well, I think so too. And we got a couple comments here, but ag associations always start with good intentions, just like the government. But they very rarely, they all, like any big organization, the bigger they get, the more bureaucratic they get, the more like infighting and the more entrenched people get in, because power is a very addictive thing. And and even as something as like, the local Nebraska cattlemen's, like in the grand scheme of things, a pretty small organization, but it has a pretty outsized influence in national, the national beef conversation, because Nebraska, not only do they a lot of cow-calf, a lot of stockers, and a ton of feedlots, and they're one of the last regions that still there's a good chunk of people that sell fat cattle on the cash market. Yeah. And so a lot of those, like Nebraska, Montana, that area, a lot of those producers get the shaft the most, because their fat cattle are what sets the basis for all the formula pricing, and these packers are able to just kind of box them out and give them bare bones, and that trickles throughout the entire industry.
Yeah. And obviously, as you know, there's been a lot of talk about negotiated fat cattle sales versus all the formulas we have in our industry, and how we tackle that. And there's been legislation introduced, and there has been so much controversy over that.
Right.
Just even in the past 2 weeks, with the compromise bill that was introduced, and then the bill that Ro Khanna and Cory Booker introduced. So
let's talk about those, because I've been sent some kind of like basic bullet points on them, but I'm not super familiar. But I know the compromise bill's kind of, it's not new. I mean, the ideas behind it are kind of, from what I understand, have been floated around for a while now.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know all the ins and outs about these bills, but I know surface level, the gist of them. So the compromise bill, it's Senator Grassley, Fisher, Wyden, and Tester. And essentially what they did is they threw all their ideas that they have come up with over the past year together, came up with a bill that would mandate negotiated cash trade per plant on a regional basis. It would be set over the average of the past 18 months, and the USDA would kind of be tied in with that. And people hate that. And I kind of understand that. USDA, in my opinion, they've not always been the most honest agency.
No.
Yeah, so there's that bill. And this is going to be super unpopular opinion, but I think that bill, there's not everything in it that we want, but I think it's level-headed and we have an opportunity to pass it. So then on the other hand, we have Cory Booker and Ro Khanna, those gentlemen, both Democrats. That doesn't matter, but I'll touch more on that in a bit. Their bill is super aggressive. And yes, we need an aggressive movement in our industry, but we also need to go after something that is attainable, or else nothing's going to happen. So,
But we got vegan Spartacus on the other one.
yeah. Yeah, he's quite a character. That bill would mandate 50%, 50% negotiated cash trade across the whole nation. And that in itself, down there in Texas, I think they only have about 4% negotiated cash trade. That might be kind of low, but you get into some of those southern states, there's very little negotiated cash trade. And I know it needs to increase, but they're not going to jump up to 50% overnight.
Not a chance.
No, exactly. And then also another part of that bill, packers can only own and feed cattle for 7 days before slaughter. That's also a stretch. It's a super aggressive bill. I'm not saying there's anything bad about it. The thing that gets me though is that Booker is behind it. And same with Ro Khanna. Ro Khanna, for those of you that don't know, he is a big advocate of the Green New Deal.
Yeah.
And then Booker, he's a vegan. And I know a lot of people, they've messaged me and they say, well, that doesn't matter. Well, what are his intentions long-term? He wanted to shut down CAFOs, concentrated.
Yeah, completely by 2030.
Yes, exactly. And I agree that there are some situations, these massive factory farming, ag, you can talk about chickens, you can talk about cattle. There are some issues, but you don't just shut those down. What are the people? What are people going to eat?
Right. And there's a lot of wiggle room we can go through before we. I always use southern Utah, southern Nevada. You can't raise, I guess you can raise grass-fed cattle out there, but your herd size is going to shrink by 2/3 because there's just not the groceries out there. They're just not the groceries.
That's exactly it. And obviously there's nothing in this bill that talks about CAFOs, but my point is you have to look at Booker's track record, just like anything, across the board. And so a few other points that I have to make while we're talking about this is he's all about this Build Back Better bill, this $1 trillion bill. Anyone that's for that, you have to question what they're about. There's so many things in his history that you have to look at to think about what is his long-term goal. And yeah, he wants to do away with CAFOs. What does he want to do away with after that?
Yeah.
I don't think getting in bed with an animal rights vegan activist, whatever you want to say, is the thing to do in the industry.
Well, and especially when he's not doing it for altruistic method. He's a vegan from a so-called moral standpoint. It's has nothing to do with a dietary need. No, he has become, well, I called him vegan Spartacus, because he is a very he's an opportunist at every level. He was one of the guys that was calling Biden a racist during the Democratic primaries. Everybody seems to forget about that, but yeah, he is not a good faith actor. Ro Khanna, I wouldn't say he's a bad faith actor. I just say his ideals are very much at odds with what our industry is about. I don't think he's a bad guy. I think a lot of those leftists, their hearts are generally in the right place. They're coming from a way different point of view than we are.
Yeah, and everyone talks about how we need a super tough, aggressive bill, and I agree, but we have to look at what's attainable as an industry. If we do want to get negotiated cash trade increased, if we want to do that through legislation, which I'm not saying that's right or wrong, if we want to do that though, you have to bite off a little bit at a time. You just can't. Yeah, sure. I wish we could just dive right in and everything would be hunky-dory next week. It's not going to happen that way. And then also, which this is going to sound super negative, but is this legislation going to do anything long-term? Are the Packers going to be able to figure out a way around it?
See, that was my entire, and I grilled Bill Bullard on this because I said, so with this, MCOOL, that's the big the big point of emphasis for RCAF USA is mandatory country of origin labeling. And I get the idea behind it.
Mhm.
I understand it, but I also said if they implement MCOOL tomorrow, who is in charge with enforcing it? The USDA, who you are in a lawsuit with over the beef checkoff, and you expect the USDA to enforce this deal that for this mandatory country of origin labeling. I don't have any faith that the USDA is going to be a good faith actor in this, and maybe I'm just way too cynical, but I can also go back and read history and see, like, the Packers and Stockyard Act is still in place, not enforced. It's still in place. It's still there. Is this what this like the 50-40 or whatever the proposal is now? Is it going to be there and not enforced? Because if that's the case, then we spent all that political capital for absolutely nothing. So yeah. I think they gotta, and you look at the state of national politics as it is right now. What have they accomplished in the we'll say the 9 months of Biden and the 4 years of Trump? What really got accomplished on Capitol Hill? Not much. 2 impeachments. And a bunch of bullshit investigations, and our taxes got raised, and we spend more money. Yeah. But what actually got accomplished? Not much. So I think we got to start working at the state level and working there.
Exactly. Yeah. Local, state, and you gotta be willing to take action, like we were talking about earlier. I think it starts with us in the industry, and we can't just sit around and wait for an organization or the government to save us. That's part of the problem as a whole. This country, it's a mentality that the government's going to provide everything, and that's a whole other avenue to go down. But as an industry, we don't want to have that kind of outlook, I think.
I don't think so either. I mean, you look at the Prime Act, which should have been like a no-brainer to just allow a state inspection to be just as good as a federal inspection, and they didn't even get a vote on that bill.
I know.
Like I don't even know if it made it out of committee. I don't even know if it made it to committee.
I don't know. And see, like my dad and I were talking last night. Like there's been buckets full of legislation that has been brought forward. Let's say in the past 2 years, what's been passed? Nothing.
Right. Yeah, and if it does get passed, is it going to be enforced? That's another like.
Yeah, like you were saying, like who is going to hold everyone accountable and make all that happen?
Yeah, and it's just well, with any law, like you can put all the laws on the books you want, but if you can't enforce it, then as you're pissing in the wind. That's all that is. And I guess like on another hot button issue is the beef checkoff, and I 100% understand the thoughts behind it. It is simply a tax on the producer. However, should you get the checkoff repealed? Is it going to do much in the long run of things? Like I think that's I don't know. Maybe it's a fight worth having just on principle, but I think we spend way too much time on that, and I don't know what good it does.
Yeah, I've been kind of vocal about this issue. Essentially, I'm opposed to the checkoff. I think when it was first implemented, it did good things, but I think it's gotten too greedy. I mean, they take in 40 million a year, something right around that, and a good chunk of that goes to our National Cattlemen's Beef Association. And where they aren't representing the grassroots cattle producer, I think it'd be good for them to get that money cut away from them, in my opinion.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, and we need a marketing program. We need the beef checkoff, like the pork guys need the pork checkoff, all that. I do think it would be great to reform it. I don't think it does a terrible lot for cattle producers right now. I'll be honest.
No, I don't think it does.
But you know, there was a petition out there to bring about a beef checkoff reform, and over the past year, and we needed 88,000 signatures, and I think maybe there was around 30,000 that were collected. And you know, it's not saying that it's not attainable, because I'm not going to be a negative Nancy, but that kind of goes back to the USDA. It's through the USDA that we have to work to get this reformed. And the USDA, they're not straight shooters.
No.
I mean, ever since
this is where we can find a lot of common ground with the lefties.
Yeah.
We don't like corporations. Neither one of us like these giant corporations, and we shouldn't, because they control federal policy, they control state policy. Hell, they control NCBA, Nebraska Cattlemen's, Colorado Livestock. They control policy, and this is, you know, the big one of the big conservative triumphs at the Supreme Court was the Super PAC. What was Citizens United decision, where corporations are people, you know, so they can spend unlimited amount of money as long as they don't have direct contact with you know, the candidate. You can spend millions and millions and millions of dollars in a super PAC. Well, guess who? Especially like these rural states, who are the biggest contributors to that? It's the meat industry. It is like the ag insurance, farm
Bureau?
Farm Bureau, the Packers, all these like huge, heavily regulated corporations. They got their fingers in all Monsanto, all these big corporate, and if like I'm kind of coming around on the GMO stuff. Like, well, don't think they're as dangerous as a lot of people think they are. I also don't take anything Monsanto says at face value. They worked actively to deny medical benefits to Vietnam vets over Agent Orange. Yeah, look that up. Oh yeah, they tried to claim no fault to it, even though they knew the harmful side effects of Agent Orange. They tried to claim no fault because they were a government contractor.
Oh my God.
And yeah. Monsanto, DeKalb, all the Purdue, all these big ag corporations have got some really, really, really shady backstories. So keep that in mind when you see some of these, you know, whether it be Farm Bureau or Monsanto or any of these Merck, all these pharmaceutical companies. We're seeing that now with this pandemic stuff. Like the pharmaceutical companies play a huge part in politics. Huge.
Yeah, it's all about cashing in.
And it's no different on the ag side of things either. So like you gotta stay tuned into that narrative too. Always kind of keep your conspiracy hat handy.
Yeah, my mirror comes off.
Yeah, I keep mine in my back pocket just for special occasions. You know, you never know when you'll need it. But have you ever read that book called I think it's called The Meat Racket?
I sure have.
You know, when you go through like the origin story of Tyson, like I'm a big fan of Tyson when they first started, like how they built into the company they are today is incredible, sketchy, but like the origin story is that is like you're rooting for the guy, and then you start to see how, but it's like every big company throughout time, like they get more bigger, bulkier, and everything becomes less efficient and corrupt.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, they start off on a good note. They're honest to start with. And then I think it's just like you talked about, power and then greed, just so addictive, and it gets out of hand. And they don't have a conscience at the end of the day, I think, when they become these big corporations.
Yeah, because corporations aren't actually people. They're made up of people, but the entity itself, they are not people. They don't have feelings, emotions. They don't have a conscience. Yeah, and you just end up with a giant good old boys club like it's always been. Like when you go through that book, like is it whatever town that is in Arkansas where Tyson's head, is it Benton?
I cannot
Uh,
remember.
Fayetteville it's somewhere in Arkansas. I know that, but like the entire town is all tied in, like the banks, the construction, the trucking, everything is tied back to Tyson,
Mhm.
and it's just a factory town, like or like the old like mining towns of old, where you had to shop at the company store, and then
Mhm.
it's the same thing, just with a little different label on it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a sad story in the long run, in my opinion. They
Hmm.
just get
I
so
think
big.
so too.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, and and that's also something you got to be wary of, is getting too much government involvement, because if you look at the dairy industry, I don't want to be in the dairy farmer shoes right now. I mean, where they've got price floors, but
Mhm.
they're just dumping tankers of milk, but yet they're still putting in, like, a lot of these in southwest Kansas, a lot of these old closed down feedlots are getting bought up and turned into heifer yards, and how much milk do we need?
I don't
How
know.
much milk do we need?
I don't know. And yeah, like you talk about government involvement, I feel like we as an industry, as a cattle industry, we've done a decent job of keeping the government out of our industry. I mean, they're
Mm-hmm.
in it, but it's nothing like you can talk about corn farmers or row
Yeah.
crops in general. They're completely subsidized.
Yeah.
And we don't want to become that. We don't want
No.
that. We want our independence. We want true competition. We don't want the government in everything. And I do understand that, yes, maybe the government can step in and assist us with a few things, but when does it start and when does it end? And
Mm.
our
Well,
administration right now, I don't know. It's all really worrisome.
well, if you look at just the genetics from the beef industry to the dairy industry, that tells you a whole lot about what you get from a subsidized product. You can trace every head of Holstein in the country back to like 3 different bulls.
Yeah.
And most seed stock producers have at least 3 different lines of bulls that they're selling.
Mhm.
Uh, and that's just one seed stock producer. So like the competition, the variety, and just the overall health of the herd is way better in the beef industry. And I work with a lot of dairy cattle, and
Yeah, I figured you
they are
did.
the most inbred. Like, I mean, they're not good cattle. I mean, they make a lot of milk, I guess, but as far as a cow goes, they're not good cattle. The
Yeah.
they're there's not there's no hardiness to them. There's no genetic diversity to them. They're cookie cutter.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what has come about from a
Mm-hmm.
government being involved so heavily in that
Yep.
industry.
Yeah. It's like the Jersey breed is kind of almost gone by the wayside because they don't produce the pounds of milk that the Holstein does. And well, when you get a bare minimum, I mean, like your price for your product can't drop below a certain level. You're not trying for any diversity of product. You're just sheer pounds. Same way with the corn farmer. It's just raise that yield, baby.
Yeah, exactly. There's no independence. I feel like there's no pride in the product you produce. Whereas, us in the cattle industry, like we want to buy those
Mm-hmm.
specific bulls to get the best calves, the most pounds, all that. We're all a little different. We're all about stepping up our game and,
Yeah,
rising above. And you take that away, and I think things go to hell.
I think so too. I mean, it's especially the farming industry. It's just depressing to watch because it's all subsidized, and everybody bitches about $4 corn. Well, you keep producing more of it. Like
Yeah.
the price ain't going up. Like
Yeah.
you kind of got to restrict the supply. I mean, if you know any basic sort of economics, like if you just keep producing more of the same crop, and everybody's doing it, that there's only so much corn you can consume.
Yeah, but no
And
matter what, they're going to get paid the
right.
real farmers. And it's just a mind blowing
Mm-hmm.
system, really.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is, and I don't know. I mean, that's one where I think I don't know what happens there. Like I don't know how you fix it. I really don't.
I don't think you come back. I mean, I don't think you turn that train around. It is going hard down the tracks. Once the government is heavily involved with that, basically once you're completely vertically integrated, you don't change things, I don't think, unless like the whole country as a whole would fall apart and everything would be built from the bottom up again, which God forbid that happens. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but it's just, every year it's buy a new John Deere. John Deere makes all that money, and you got to buy all them John Deere parts and
yeah.
But it's okay. They'll send you a free cap every now and then, so that's worth it.
Who buys a new John Deere? What are those like?
I don't know. I don't know, but it's and then I don't know. It's wild. I don't know. I think you're right. I think it comes crashing down at some point, and I don't know. I look at my home county, and I look at some of the literature that like got people to Baca County, Colorado, and they were billing it as like the next Willamette Valley, just a farmer's paradise. Well, no, it's part of the region that Zebulon Pike dubbed the Great American Desert. We get somewhere between 11 and 13 inches of rainfall a year.
Oh my.
And it's not farm country. It never has been. And it directly led to the Dust Bowl by people moving there.
Yeah.
But they still try to raise dryland crops. Same dryland crops they've always raised, and I don't know. It's just it's a never-ending cycle, it seems like.
Yeah, it is. And I don't know. I think ag is becoming more corporate all the time across the board. We can talk about every industry. And for those of us that are still in the industry that are independent, we just have to keep our independence and find a niche market in order to make the wheels continue to turn. Like I was talking about earlier, we have to, as ourselves, we have to be smart businessmen. We have to be better marketers.
The marketing, especially, like I have never seen an industry bitch so much about the state of the industry and spend so little time marketing their own product.
We have to, look for a different route,
Yeah, you can't do it the way granddad's always done it anymore. That's
the
thing.
Exactly.
And that's not saying your granddad was wrong. At the time, he was probably right.
For
but
sure. Exactly.
Change.
Things have changed. And there are new ideas out there. Even me as a young person coming back to our ranch, the new ideas that I want to implement, and maybe there'll be a flop, who knows, but you have to be willing to try. You can't continue to do the same thing and not get ahead or
take a risk. Is that what you're saying? Are we going to take a risk? Oh my gosh. Don't say risk. That's
God forbid.
Bubble wrap everything. Somebody's got to put their neck out there.
I'm all about risk. I think that's just how you get ahead in life. And you'll lose some, you win some, you lose some, but you take enough risk and you got enough drive behind you. I think that's how you make things happen.
Yeah, I think so. And when you look at the risk that people say they're in your neck of the woods, like you're basically the frontier. From Omaha west is, it's wild country. And guess what they did? They drove cattle out there and they built a ranch. And you know what? One morning they could have a bunch of Shoshone just run off all their stock, burn the house. But guess what? They did it anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a little more risk than, missing a banker note. That's a little more risk.
Yeah, I think about my ancestors. They traveled out there to Western Nebraska. They lived in the side of a hill, a dugout for a while, before they got everything homesteaded. The risk they took, and this is another route. I think we can't be comfortable and we can't be lax. We have to be willing to take those risks. We've become such a society of comfort. And I know that's a big conversation, but even in our industry, we take those big risks. I've heard people say negative things about these new processing plants that are coming on. And
oh yeah,
my biggest thing is, yeah, there's a chance they might not go over. I don't know. And you don't know, but imagine if they do go over. Think about the
right.
good. It's incredible.
Yeah.
All those people that have invested their money and their time, like, man, I admire them. It is so awesome. So
yeah, I think it's great. I think it's great. And I had Trey Wasserberger on to talk about sustainable beef. And like, I said at the time, like, I am glad to see somebody stepping out there doing something besides just bitching and besides relying on the three main trade associations or the government. Like, don't rely on the government. Like, you never can. You never have been able to. Why do we think we can rely on it now?
Yeah,
like
that's exactly it.
We're an industry of get the hell out of my way, I'm doing it. And we've turned into a bunch of whiny little bitches too. And it's like, we got to get back to that. Just like, get out of the way, let me do it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the mentality. And you touched on Trey. He is just a leader in this industry, for a lack of better terms. I mean, he's the kind that he puts his head down and he gets shit done. And we need more people like that, I think. And we have to, like you said, we have to be willing to take a risk and possibly get ahead.
Well, it's like everybody who's ever worked cattle with an older person has had that moment where they go, get the hell out of my way, I'll do it myself. And we need people to do that. Like, stop trying to, rely on Jerry Moran or whoever your senator is. Get the hell out of the way and just take charge. Like, just do what's right for your operation, whether that means you have to let go your superior rep, and because you're feeding out your cattle your own this time. Whatever the case may be, like, if it's good for your industry or your operation, that's what you got to do.
Exactly. And until we vote better people in that maybe do represent us, our industry better, we can't rely on the ones that are in there. Cause like you said, it's just the same story over and over again. They're not going to step up for us because most of them are paid off. So
yeah. Cause I don't know if anybody had heard, but there was 80 Republicans in the House that voted to implement a vaccine registry, federal vaccine registry. And there's 80 Republicans that signed on to that, including Dan Crenshaw, Adam Kinzinger, Liz Cheney, if you needed another reason to vote her out, Wyoming.
Yeah.
But yeah, all those cast of characters supposedly standing up for conservative values just voted to implement a vaccine database, which that should scare the shit out of you.
For certain. And I hope everyone's aware of who did that and they make damn sure they don't get back in because my gosh, I mean, we can talk about the vaccine mandate and all that. That's scarier than shit.
Yeah, right. And so you have people that have been publicly vocal against vaccine mandates that just basically voted in favor of it. So, don't trust your politicians.
Exactly. I feel like there's only been a handful that we could trust in history.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there's just been a very few. But I'd like to get Thomas Massey on sometime. He was the author of that Prime Act, and I'd like to know like why it never, or like, because I mean, he's not a very popular guy on Capitol Hill anyways. I mean, he's very much in the Ron Paul wing of things, where he's a kind of a Dr. No. He's going to vote no on a lot of shit. Yeah. But he's a cattle producer there in Kentucky himself, and I'm curious why it should have been such a no-brainer bill that just never even took off. Yeah,
I don't know. It would be great to get him on and chat about that because that would have been incredibly beneficial for our industry.
Yeah, it would have been all these like small mom and pop guys that a lot of times they're doing like 1 or 2 beef a month, and then their big season is deer season when they got to make a bunch of jerky. then the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden you're like a year out trying to like I'm
Yeah.
trying to get a steer butchered right now, and it's a pain in the ass. And a lot of these guys are ready to expand, and but it's just so much money to retrofit everything to get to USDA standards.
Oh, for certain. Yeah,
And nonsense regulations too. Like
Yeah,
they're not for safety measures. It's not for food quality. It's
yeah,
to justify their own existence, basically.
it's just basically bullshit hoops that they want these guys to jump through. It's ridiculous, and it's really unfortunate. But it goes back to the USDA just being jackwagons.
Yep, and it's wild. You said something earlier like about following the money. Who was Sonny Perdue? He was a senator before he was Secretary of Ag, wasn't he?
I believe down in Georgia.
Yeah, so Georgia's big in the pork industry, big in the poultry industry, big in cotton, row crop farming.
Yep.
I would bet you he got a ton of money from Farm Bureau, Monsanto, all these people that we were talking about. I bet if you go back through his election profile, those will be right up there at the top of his donors.
Yeah. Touching on Purdue,
American Meat Institute. I bet they're in his back pocket quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And that showed by his actions while he was in that position. I feel this is unpopular, I'm sure, but I feel like he was a very poor ag secretary. And I'm not saying Bill Sack
I don't think it's all that unpopular. I don't think it's all that unpopular.
But I know it's a tough position to be in. God knows I probably couldn't do it, but my gosh, like it was I felt like it was a good old boys nomination to get him in there.
Oh yeah, they all are.
Yeah,
they always are.
I don't know. He was a disappointment.
Yeah, I think so. And I don't know. There, as far as on the forecast, I don't think there's anybody that's going to be better out there anytime soon. So it's like I said, you gotta take stuff into your own hands and not rely on these jackwagons.
Yeah, exactly. Because God knows what they're going to do or what they're going to come up with next.
Yeah. So what's the future look like for Mackenzie Johnston?
Oh gosh, well, that's a good question. So as we talked about earlier, I worked for Tri-State for a while, and then this summer I did some contract work for the Cowboy Channel and RFD TV, and that came to an end. So right now I'm back full-time on our ranch, which I absolutely love. And I'm just kind of working as a freelance reporter and journalist, but I don't know what's next really. I would like to do a little bit more with my career, as in writing and reporting and something in the industry. I'm super passionate about the cattle industry. So I don't know. I'm kind of just flying by the seat of my pants. We're so busy here on the ranch with fall work, and the weather's been so great, projects, and I don't know. I know that sounds kind of ridiculous, but I take it day by day, and if an opportunity comes up, I'll just run with it. And I know what works for me. I know what I want for a career and all that jazz. So we'll just see what comes down the pipe next.
I'm assuming Nebraska cattlemen's will be hearing plenty from you in the future.
I'm just hoping they reach out to me, maybe they want to rehire me. I don't know.
Well, I think it'd be in their, I think it'd be in a good move on their part. Acknowledge they were wrong maybe a little bit, but I wouldn't hold my breath either.
No, I'm pretty sure. No, I don't. I think they would slash my tires if they got the chance.
Well, yeah, it's it's a good old boys club acting like a bunch of mean girls.
Yeah, exactly. I don't fit, which I'm actually proud of. I'm glad I don't fit.
I was thinking about this when I was riding pins the other day, because the Lauren Boebert Ilhan Omar feud was trending real big on Twitter, and we're now getting female elected officials that grew up on like Bring It On and Mean Girls, and they're acting exactly like Bring It On and Mean Girls, like Bring It On Capitol Hill edition.
Oh, what a wreck. I mean, we laughed,
it's terrible.
but what a wreck. What?
I know. I know people personally that voted for Lauren Boebert, who knows that she's an idiot, but she was so much better than the alternative that,
Oh my God.
what do you do?
Yeah, see, and that's the thing. Like, we talk about our crappy leadership, but anyone that has half a mind doesn't want to step into that position because they know it's just, it's a shit show, which is unfortunate.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I guess for nothing else, it's entertaining.
Oh,
it's
good
shitty entertainment. Yeah. I've used this quote several times. I can't remember who initially said it, but they say politics is Hollywood for ugly people, and it's not wrong. It's not wrong.
Yeah. It's pretty spot on.
Yeah. Well, Mackenzie, I've sure enjoyed it. Where can anybody find your work? I know you're on Lonesome Lands.
Yeah, Lonesome Lands. They have all my articles. I don't have a website or anything. I just do everything through Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So you can give me a follow on Facebook. I almost have 5,000 friends, and that's where they cap you at. So just give me a follow, or give me a follow on Instagram or Twitter. You know, I share everything through all my social media platforms.
Right on. Well, cool. Well, I appreciate it. If you'll hold on just a second, we'll wrap this up. And yeah, thanks for coming on. And go follow her. Go read her stuff. It's pretty good. And move your ass. We're burning daylight.
Your eyes up in the morning beneath the stars so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horses kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. You'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight. Burning daylight. Burning daylight. In the saddle till the job's done right. Burning daylight. Well, life is just a gather, and you won't catch 'em all. But when you ride through the gate, make sure you sit up tall. I can see the horizon, it's looking pretty bright. Well, get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight.